Have you ever wondered if God really speaks to you? A lot of Christians ask that quietly in their hearts. They see other people talk about dreams, visions, or hearing God's voice, and they think, why doesn't God speak to me like that? Today, I want to share a real story that helped me understand how God speaks and maybe and 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 how you can learn to recognize his voice too. Recently, I was thinking about my son. He hasn't been baptized yet, and he's getting ready to head back home to Boston. Before he leaves, I want to encourage him to look for a church when he gets home. So I told him to look for a church, a good church, when he gets back home. And he says, Dad, I've been searching online, but I can't find a pastor like the one you have at your church. I told them, keep looking, pray. God will guide you. Now here's where scriptures comes in. The Bible tells us, test all spirits. It doesn't matter who the person is or what title they hold, whether they're a pastor, a bishop, a leader. We are called to test the spirit behind the message. But listen carefully. The Bible say test the spirits. It does not say become a pastor or take authority over a pastor. In other words, discernment does not equal leadership. You can test what you're hearing without taking on a role God didn't give you. Let me share something personal. There was a season in my life when I will wake up excited, excited every morning with such an excitement, ready to share something with my wife. Maybe it was a Bible verse, maybe a dream, maybe a lesson God put on my heart. One morning, she looked at me and said something that broke my heart. She said, I wish God spoke to me the way he speaks to you. God doesn't speak to me. I look at her and immediately said, that's not true. God does speak to you. You just haven't learned how to recognize his voice yet. And that's where many believers are today. Most people struggle to hear God's because they expect an audio voice. But let me be honest, I can't remember ever hearing God's audio voice. Yet God has spoken to me in more ways than I can count. In the Bible, God spoke through a donkey, a burning bush, a child, prophets, dreams, vision, and even unexpected people. Sometimes a child may ask you a simple biblical question, and you think the question is for you to answer them, to answer for them. But in reality, it was God asking you that same question. God isn't limited. He speaks through scriptures, through people, through moments, through impressions, and through peace or through discomfort. Let me show you what discernment looks like. When Jesus told his disciple that he was going to be crucified, Peter said, never, Lord, this will never happen to you. But Jesus didn't say, Peter, stop talking. He said, get behind me, Satan. Why? Because Jesus recognized the voice behind the voice. That is discernment. That's what it looks like to test the spirits. Now, how do you learn to recognize God's voice? The same way you learn any voice, by becoming familiar with it. The more you read scriptures, the more you spend time with God, the more you talk to Him and listen to Him, the easier it becomes to discern His voice from your own thoughts, from the enemy, and from the noise of life. Rome wasn't built in one day, and Christians aren't are not transformed overnight. So I started helping my wife in the simplest way. Every morning I will ask, what verse or thought came to your mind today? She will tell me, and then I ask, where do you think that came from? God, the enemy, or your own thoughts? Little by little, day by day, she began to recognize God's voice. Not because God suddenly started speaking, but because she learned how to listen. So let me ask you today, is God speaking to you and you just haven't learned to recognize it yet? Don't wait for an audio voice. Don't wait for a burning bush. Don't look for something dramatic. Just listen. God is already speaking. And the more you stay in His Word, the clearer His voice will become.